sermons that we were preaching on the book of Genesis. And if you missed any, or not only this, but all others, you can just go back to, you can go to the YouTube channel where you will find our sermons. And thanks to Ezekiel for that. Today, our focus is on chapter 12, verses 1 to 4. Sometime in 1845, a man wrote a hymn, and it goes like this. We don't sing a lot of hymns here. It says, "Once to every man and nation comes the moment to decide, in the strife of truth and falsehood, for the good or evil side, some great cause, some great decision, offering each the bloom or blight. And the choice goes by forever twixt that darkness and that light." What the song says, that's the first stanza of the song, is every moment of our life we are presented with choices. The choices where we have to make a decision. Every man, includes women, and every nation, these moments of decision comes. The decisions and choices between strife of truth and falsehood, blight or bloom, good or evil, darkness and light. In our lives too, God comes to our life with offers, watersheds in life, and the rest of the life depends on what we choose. Every moment in our life, every phase of our life, these choices are given. But it is for us to make that choice. Should I make a choice for the new, choose the new in the place of the old? Should I make the choice of good, choose good, throw away the bad or the evil? Should I go or continue in the lower, or should I opt for the highest? That is the choice. Now here in chapter 12, verse 1 to 4, the whole book of Genesis comes to a climax. And I would, for the time being, leave you at the climax. This, I will read the whole thing to you. So just listen. "Now the Lord said to Abraham," and this man, Abraham, here will be later called Abraham, "Go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. And I'll make you a great nation, and I'll bless you and make your name great, so that you will be a blessing. I'll bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you, I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth shall be blessed." And Abraham did not say a single word in that 4 verses. And the 4th verse says, "So Abraham went, as the Lord had told him. And Lot went with him. Abraham was 75 years old when he departed from Canaan." Now, as I said, the story of book of Genesis comes to a climax. It is something like, I was trying to envisage it, visualize it. It is like a multi-lane highway, expressway, converging at a tunnel. Think of 6 lanes of traffic. And then it finally narrows down to just 1 lane and enters a tunnel, only to be, after the tunnel, to diverge again to many more, and opens new vistas. Not just a plain road. And the view after the tunnel, the narrow tunnel through which everything passes through, is a new vista, an amazing vista. One of the countries where I lived, I used to go at those places, because why I liked it is there is a road through a lonely place, and you just climb the hill all the way up, and as you come to the peak of the hill on the top of the road, then you have a beautiful valley down. But you can't get that scene until you reach that height. See, that is the amazing thing. See, here when you drive through the potholes and all the rocks and things like that, then you reach the peak, and from the peak, there's a beautiful valley, lakes and meadows, sheep grazing. A wonderful view it is. After returning that from the country after 4 years of living, I went back after 5 years. And from the railway station, my friend picked me up and I said, where do you want to go? I said, I don't want to eat anything, I don't want to drink anything, I don't want to do anything. I just want to drive along that road. Because I just want to take that scene. Now comes the such moments in our life. God says, come. Here is something that I want to offer. Now look at this book now. Here we have Genesis chapter 1. It's a revision lecture actually. We have this whole cosmos God created. And in this whole cosmos, God created a tiny planet. And in this tiny planet, God divided it into a watery patch and a dry land. And an atmosphere to surround it. And then he started filling it. Birds in the air, fish in the sea waters, and human beings and animals, beasts of the field in the dry land. Then it narrows down to a small garden. 2 people. Then the garden is left behind, they are cast out. And then the story goes. And you know the story, how the story goes. They multiply. Then God devastates them, wipes them out by a flood. But in His mercy, He hangs a rainbow and says, no, I'm not always fighting. This is my promise of grace. Then we have, in chapter 10, the presentation of the United Nations, ununited nations, the whole list of nations that came out of these people. And then in chapter 11, we saw an episode. That was last week we had a sermon on it. How they used their creativity and their technology to compete against God, rebel against God. And then comes chapter 11, and towards the end of it says, he picks one son of Noah. Noah had 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And picks Shem and gives us, if you have your Bibles, you can go through it, and talks about the descendants of Shem and the nations and the countries that originated from it. Then God narrows it down. And among the Shemites, many hundreds of Shemites, there is a man called Terah. He had 3 sons, Nahor and Haran and Abraham. Then he came to a place called Haran, where Terah died. Terah was looking for good opportunity, where he died. And after he was dead, his father was dead, God calls this man one man. Not all of them, just one man. Chapter 12, verse 1. And God said to Abraham, go from your country. Now, after this you see, verse 4 says, and Abraham went. Now, if you go to the 38 chapters that comes, here is a story, not of the world, not of the universe, not of other things, but the story of Abraham alone. And that opens a new vista in the book. In the next 38 chapters of the book, remaining verses of 12 and the chapters of book, we hear about Abraham and his son and his grandson and his great-grandson, and their stories and their walk with God, where they succeeded and where they failed. Here is a great moment in the book. It's a great moment in the history of the world. A man called Abraham moves from the shadows of the nations, the huge number of nations where they don't have a face at all. It doesn't make any sense to us. The shadow of his dominating father to prominence. And if you look at the history, Abraham becomes the father of many nations, many ethnic groups, and also the father or founder of three prominent religions in the world, which we group together as Abrahamic religions: Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. Here is new life in the place of old life. It is Abraham entering a new avenue of life. Abraham becomes a blessing. Who is Abraham? We have no mention of him anywhere in the Bible until this point. But here comes the 6 or 7 or 10 or million lanes of traffic merging at one man. And now that man has to take the decision whether the story, God's story of the human race, should go forward or backward, or be stuck at that point. This is crucial. This man called Abraham has to take the decision now whether the story of Genesis 1 to 11 should proceed or stop there. It goes on. It goes on to Revelation. The story goes on. Then talks about their enslavement in Egypt, their deliverance from Egypt, the kingdom, that the land that God gave them, and how they lost the land, and how they came back to the land, how a Messiah was promised, and finally his great-great-grandson, our Savior, was born. All because Abraham said, yes, I am ready for the new. That's the point. If, just imagine another way of imagining it. You have come to a wall, and wall has only one small slit through which you alone can pass through. And God says, jump through this slit in this wall. And he doesn't say what? He doesn't say anything what is out at the other side of the wall. And God says, look, here is the block, but I show you. He says, jump. Will you or will not? But Abraham did. And then he opens a new vista of the remaining 65 books of the Bible, the story where our story, our life, our destiny gets interwoven with his own story. This magic happens. Taking the story forward, taking our life forward, the moment of decision comes in 3 steps. That is, the first is hearing. And God said, please keep the screen, the verses on the screen. And God said, go. Verse 1. And God said to Abraham, the Lord said to Abraham, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land that I will show you. Here is a hearing. And then there is obedience. Verse 4 says, and Abraham left. But between these 2 points comes something else. And that is what is called faith. Faith. There is hearing and there is obedience, and in between comes a wonderful expression I should say, that is faith. Now this also means 2 other things. You can put this in two other ways. That is, here is call from God, and there is obedience from the human. When we make this transition, when we have to make every day, every moment, there is this change comes in our life. And God puts us in a higher level. And from there, he says, okay, I'm taking you there. From there, you start your journey together. Your new journey starts there. I was thinking of this new couple who are married in our church yesterday, day before yesterday. And I was thinking, and I was meditating, in the sense I was contemplating on the whole thing. Now, what has happened to them now? 2 individuals, they are united in holy matrimony from different backgrounds, and now they start their life together. For me, it is not simply a linear life, another point in the life. It is a life in a new face a higher ground. Now, by the way, you may see Xavier and Rubina in the CCD or riding on the back of his bike or in the Reliance Fresh. So please don't stop them and ask Rubina, do you have father's permission to go with him or all that? Okay? I mean, this is to the senior people here who did not attend the wedding. Don't stop these guys. They are married, legally married. Now, since yesterday, but if you see somebody else, please let me know. I'll take care of it. What I'm trying to say is that life is now at a new beginning. Two salaried people, and they have socially, economically, in every way, they have achieved, climbed a new step. And definitely in their case, it involved a lot of prayer and a lot of faith was involved in it also. From there, they start a new life. I'm not talking about just marriage. In Abraham's life, he took a step, and that was to respond to God's call, and that opens a new avenue. I will explain later how this moment of decision comes and how we... So there are two things. God calls people, and people respond to it or fail to. What does call mean? What is God's call mean? God's call involves many things. First of all, it involves many things. It doesn't involve many things. First of all, it is a call to move from the present to the future. God is not calling you or me simply to be at the present, to be where we are, to be what we are. But God's call in Abraham's life is to the future. Look at the tense in that second verse, or the 1b. Lord said to Abraham, go from your country and your kindred and your father's house to the land. It's always future. Will show you. I will make you a great nation. I will bless you, and I will make your name great, that you will be a blessing. You are not right now. That means you are not right now what God has promised. God's call is always to a future. The second aspect of God's call is, God's call doesn't come with any guarantee. No guarantee. What guarantee is that? No guarantee. My brother taught me to swim. Not in a swimming pool, but in a murky waters behind our house. In a small lake, maybe a puddle, a huge puddle. It's not by instructions. There is no guarantee. He just taught me to swim by many times throwing me from a boat which we were rowing. He just threw me into the water. And helplessly, a 5-year-old or 6-year-old, I had to somehow survive. There was no guarantee. There is no lifesavers. There was no anything to wear. Nothing. Just throw into the water. That's how I learned swimming. Now, you don't want me to as a swimming instructor, do you? You know how I'm going to teach you swimming. Now, that's what God does. God doesn't give you any guarantee. I will show you a land. Suppose God cannot show me a land, then what? It will be like when I took a team of students to this place called Lohagad. And I said, I know it is on up the hill. And we walked the whole day looking around for it. We didn't find it. But I did it last second time with the church group. And then we came back tired because I didn't know. And they just believed me. And now they know whom they should believe. See, the whole day, climbing 2 hours, hiking up all the way, and saw the Lohagad on the side. And I said, that's a wrong fort. And I took them to the wrong fort, looking at the right fort. God doesn't give any guarantee. But there is a guarantee. That's the thing. What is the guarantee? There's no guarantee. God doesn't say, I will show you a land. I will give you a guarantee that when you take 3 steps, when you walk 3, 4 or 5 steps, you will see a full-blown fig tree. That means you are in the right path. God doesn't give any guarantee like that. I will ask you to go to a new land, a new country. Leave this and go. Because here is the guarantee. Or God says, this is the small map that where you are going to see. God doesn't give that guarantee. Because what God said itself is the guarantee. The divine word itself is the guarantee. And we don't need any guarantee other than that. It is God who said to Abraham. It is God who called Abraham. And we don't know whether Abraham had any previous experience of the Lord. But God calls us without any guarantee because it is God who calls us. To see that is most important thing. In our making our decisions, making our transitions, whether it is job, whether it is choosing a college for admission next year, whether it is decision regarding marriage, whether it is decision regarding moving to another city or coming to this city, anything. If you want to see God's hand in that, we need to hear the call of God. Now, it's difficult because the third aspect of God's call is God calls us from what is concrete to what is vague. When God said, go to the promised land, he said, I don't know. He didn't tell him anything. But what was leaving behind, I'll come to that in a minute, what was concrete. That is what was the part of the call. What does it imply? What does it mean? What does it imply? God's call means. God's call means 3 other things as well. It implies, 1, it involves a departure. It involves keep moving. And it involves stopping at where God says stop. God told him, depart from this place. Go from your country and from your kindred and your father's house to the land I will show you. The land that I will show you is the vague thing. But God said, go from your country. Country was the most comfortable place for him. That is where he had security. He probably had land. Everything was fine. Now, from that comfort, from that settled life, when that satisfied life, God says, depart it, leave it behind. Many times when I think of moving out of Pune, this is what I find difficult. I can't leave Pune. Many of us, it's not normal, natural. Many people who have lived in this city for a while, for a long, long time, they can't think of any place other than MG Road to shop or Lakshmi Road to shop. They can't think of any other bakery other than Kayani Bakery because they have been eating and they're so comfortable with that toast. Or you maybe forget those things. The favorite Marwadi who brought your grocery home whenever you just gave a phone call. It's moved to an uncertain city itself. So think of moving from his own people and from his own family. And God says, move, keep moving. I'll show you the land. Now what does that mean? You cannot stop in the way. On the way, keep moving. It involves moving, keep moving. But not simply keep moving. That will be called wandering. If the whole life is keep moving, if you keep on changing a job, keep on changing a house, keep on changing without any intention for a permanence in your life, that means wandering. That is actually a curse. The curse of Cain. And God made him a wanderer. God cast Adam and Eve out of this place. God scattered the people of Babel. But settled. But what means here? What it means here is keep moving until I say stop. Keep moving until I say stop. And because I have a plan for you. I have a nation for you. I have a country for you. I have a land for you. And I have a plan for you. You are going to have a blessing. But until then, keep moving. Yesterday, and Sheila and me were watching a short talk on the TED. And I was watching it for the second time with her. And the whole purpose of the thrust of that talk was simply this. Are you telling the same story all these years? A story of persecution, a story of abuse, a story of how people failed you and all that? Or do you have a new story to tell now? Are you moving in your story? Are you moving in your story? Or is stuck in the past? Always talk about the abuse by somebody or the failures. Are you talking about that? Are you willing to move on to a new experience and keep moving until God comes us to a land of a broad land, a firm place to stand? Now, finally, as far as call is concerned, call is a command. Now we have military people living here in this church. We used to pray for the armed forces. At that time there was nobody in the congregation. Now we have stopped praying for the armed forces, So now people are coming from the armed forces to the church. That's a paradox. They very well know this language. Call is not simply somebody calling us like this. It's not simple as that. Call is a command. Command in the sense it says, go. It is not pleading. Let's negotiate. Are you the right person for this job? No. Will you be able to take it up? No, there's no negotiation. Call is not a negotiation. God's call is not a pleading. God's call is not a bargain. God's call is a command. Go. Now, it's frightening, isn't it? When we say God calls us, it's an imperative. It's very frightening. We have to obey. Command, if you don't obey command, this is very dangerous. It's not ever tolerated. But God's call that comes as a command is another side. Now, for example, when I don't speak much Hindi, so I am actually a innocent spectator in the Hindi service because I don't understand most of the things that preachers preach here because I don't understand. So how do you sit through a sermon when you don't understand a word of it? But I try to concentrate. But I sometimes thought that my part of the service is to take care of the children at the back. Sometimes I used to do that. So, especially Nathan. I remember a few occasions when Nathan was running around and I had to take Nathan out. So, I'll tell Nathan, let's go. And Nathan comes with me. And we walk down and I take him all the way around and go to the Marwadi shop and I buy him a Milky Way and not Milky Way. What is that called? A Milky chocolate bar. Milky bar. And we come. When I say go, it's a command. Let's go. Don't mess up the service here. Don't shout here. Don't run around here. You're messing up the service. Let's go. So Nathan comes with me. But Nathan goes because when I say go, I'm not sending him alone. I am taking him. That's what the beauty of God's call is. When I say God's call is a command, it's only half truth. When we say God's command is when God's call is a command, it's simply half the truth. The full truth is, come, I will show you. That implies that God is going with us. That is why we can obey God. That is why we can respond to His call in faith, in confidence, because God is not throwing an ejectile like a cannonball. The cannon remains back. Only the ball goes. No. God is not sending a rocket where the launching pad is still firm here and you are ejected, thrust forward to an unknown future. No. That is not what God's call is. God calls us in our lives to take a new step of faith. That is simply because God says, come, will you please journey with me? Let's go to the new land. Let's go to a new future. It is an invitation to a future with God. Now that is God's part. God calls us to an unknown future. To leave what is firm, satisfiable, our comforts, our comfort zone. But God waits, not long years, only that space between verse 3 and 4. That's the only space allowed there. Between 3 and 4. And Abraham left. You know what the beauty of Abraham's life? Later in chapter 15 verse 6, it is recorded, it says, Abraham believed God and it counted it to him as righteousness. Abraham believed God. That is what Abraham's response was. His response was faith. And if you look at the Bible, it comes in a number of passages in the New Testament. This verse that Abraham believed God and it was reckoned to him as righteousness, this verse comes in the New Testament. Romans chapter 4, chapter 9. Romans chapter 4, verse 22. Galatians chapter 3, verse 6. And also in a verse in the book of James. Abraham believed God. That is the turning point. The turning point is Abraham was able to see the new vistas in his life and the life of the generations to come, including us, because he believed God. What is faith? Faith is now adulterated very much. We have different versions of faith. People just think that faith is self-suggestion, auto-suggestion. Faith is not an assumption. I just believe there is God. I just believe God told me to do this. It is not an assumption. Faith is not an assumption. Faith is not make me believe something. It's not just a belief. You can't and I can't have faith unless I have heard God. No one can have faith unless they have heard God. Otherwise, faith becomes simply an assumption, simply a guesswork, simply an expression of our self-confidence or false confidence. Faith is an obedient response to God's word. We cannot have faith, remember this, we cannot have faith unless God has spoken. We have no excuse if we have heard God as well. There are two aspects of it. We cannot have faith unless we have heard God. And we have no excuse if we hear God. The problem with Israel was, and many of us too, is that we hear God, but we don't have faith, the courage to act. But Abraham did not ask a single question. Abraham asked only one time. Abraham's response was automatic. And now it means, not only means that is why there is a guarantee, as I already said. There's a sure guarantee. What is the guarantee? There's no other guarantee, but it is God who has spoken. Now, faith involves concrete action as well. Faith is not simply sitting in my study, looking at the screen in my laptop and trying to see things in the screen. That is not what faith is. Faith is leaving our comfort zones. Faith involved is not an intellectual assent. That means, yes, I agree. I think it is true. I think it's good. That is not faith. That is belief. That is belief. Faith is faith only if there is an action that follows it. That is why Abraham's faith was honored. What was his concrete action? His action was living and moving and settling only when God says settle down. It's actually a living, and it means a moving. The two aspects of his faith. God said, leave your country, leave your kindred, and leave your father's house. Three essential factors of an ancient nomad's life. See? Once I traveled in a train, and it was a long time back, running from the capital to another state capital. And I entered that cabin. And in that cabin, there was already a marriage party has booked most of the seats in the cabin. And my seat happened to be in the midst of that. I was a lonely person. And all others were so much attached. They were brothers and sisters, uncles and aunties, grandpa and grandma. The whole family has booked 3 or 4 coupe of the train. And my seat happens to be in the middle of them. I can still never forget that experience I had. The way they were trying to throw me out of that place. Because it was a kindred. The family. They spoke a different language. And they were talking to each other about me. I just thought, my God, will this train ram into another train and all of us die except me? You come to moments like that. Living is not easy. Living is a painful experience. Living in a foreign country is a painful experience. Being among strangers is a painful experience. It's not easy. You have this whole system that gives us security and comfort. Now, how do these Tanzanian women respond now in Bangalore? For a mistaken identity, stripped off, paraded naked in the street. Have you ever empathized with these people? Many of our own dear friends here, we know what it means to be in a foreign country. I've been there. I had my share of it. And I can fully empathize with these people of ours, especially those who are mistreated. You will not be given a house. Every house, most of the housing societies have this sign. Single students and foreigners not allowed. Then who do you allow there? But there's no problem for stray dogs to enter anywhere. What a nonsense we are living in. A cultural nonsense. But I'm talking about this. Being in a stranger's place. In a strange place. Then God says not only that, not only a country. Then he says, leave your kindred. Because in the country there is a group, ethnic groups. We are Shemites. My father is this great-grandfather, and we have a smaller group in it. Leave that. Then God says, leave your father's house. Means, which is the larger family of Abraham. He says, leave. He had to leave Nahor and Milcah, his brother and his sister-in-law. He leaves other children, if there was, of Haran, Nahor, and they move on. Leave. And where are you going? Where do you go? God says, no, keep moving until you reach that place, a place called Shechem, the north of the land of Israel, where I will show you the rest of it. And then what happened in his life? He kept on moving and moving and moving and moving. And took more than 450 years almost for them to have a foothold. They were moving. But the most important and beautiful thing is God was moving with him. You read the rest of Genesis, which we are not going back now, for a few months at least. Wherever Abraham went, God appeared to him. He built an altar. Wherever Jacob went, his grandson went, God appeared to him because God was moving with him. Wherever Joseph went, his great-grandson, God was with him in the dungeon even, giving him dreams and visions. And when they were in Egypt for 400 plus years, God was with them. And God brings them to the new land. God was in Sinai, and God said, my presence will go with you forever. And he moves on there as well. Now, the simple question I would like to conclude with is this. Are we ready? A lot of decisions has to be taken. Many times fear draws us back from jumping. But God invites us to throw ourselves into his hands and says, look, you have a story which has to be unfolded. Now I am calling you, probably those who are married or going to get married, to married life. And through which your marriage, I want to, or my name will be honored. Would you take that step? Some people God calls at their life and say, look, will you move on so that you take up a job, earn something for the glory of God, through which many people will be blessed? Will you come to serve me? Use your talents for the glory of God. Are you willing to take that step? God is calling us. But we need to say, not only yes, the response from us is not simply an intellectual accent, saying yes in the brain, but going with our feet, taking up with our hand. We need faith to throw ourselves into God's hand. Just as the confidence, as I said, that Nathan used to have. When I say go, yes, he takes hold of my finger, and we move. Because he knows who has asked him to go. That is the faith that we need now. Do I have enough faith to respond to God's call so that God will take me to a higher ground, to a higher level? May God bless us. And let's close with a word of prayer. As the worship team comes, and yes, we continue worship.